took place during a shopping spree with my mother on Hanukkah. We were in New York City. It was very crowded, and we were walking down the street, and there was some commotion on the sidewalk in front of us, and I got a really bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I just felt like something was happening. And I walked along and looked up and saw this man who was, he was blind, and he had no eyes. He had big sockets, big empty holes where there should have been eyes, and he was begging. And he just looked so scary to me, and forlorn and rejected. And then I became very inconsolable, and I couldn't be calmed down. And we kept walking down the street, and lo and behold, there was another guy propped up against the building, and he had no arms and legs, and he was also begging. And after those experiences, I started to have nightmares. And for years to follow, I had nightmares of these figures, these blind men and these armless, legless men and other people with other deformities chasing me, okay? So, interestingly enough, as a child, I had a very unusual form of low vision that my eyesight continued to deteriorate through my life, and by the time I was 50, I was almost legally blind, and it was a very hidden disability. I managed my life really well, but that did impact my relationships very intensely. And the eyesight issues have been medically resolved for the most part, but the patterns that are there remain. So I'm going to read a passage about that. As a child, I didn't know the meaning that my Hanukkah shopping trip and ensuing nightmares would carry. Not in real time. I couldn't identify the themes, motifs, or figures that would populate my storyline and impact my relationships. Why did I dream of beggars and eyeless, limbless men? What is their power and purpose? And why, in the privacy of my own thoughts, did I often think of myself as crippled? As I've said, words matter. Clearly, even with my eyesight problems, I'm able-bodied. Because there's a deep truth in my dreaming, I've spent years crippled by self-dislike, seeing myself as largely unable to overcome shortcomings in my personal and professional life, unable to accept myself, undeserving of love or contentment, less than. This distorted thinking cripples me. It is my kryptonite, convincing me my life has little worth and casting me as a victim in my own story. But other times, more often now, I frame this story differently. I look for purpose in my being unable. I ask myself what I can learn, how I can use this experience to activate my development. This vastly different attitude leads me to a different place. It leads me to an empty space, a hollow bone, where water falls, where wind comes through, where spirit lives, where I find that my profound sense of vulnerability, of being delicate and unable, is a beautiful thing. Expressed in the right circumstances, my vulnerability is, in fact, my superpower. When I accept this fragile me, this not able me, with all her limitations, I also notice others. I notice that most of us hide our frailties and disabilities when we can. Of course we do. The quality of being vulnerable is rarely celebrated in modern patriarchal cultures. We're taught to power through, toughen up, and overcome weaknesses. And I can see a similar vulnerability mirrored in others, each in their unique way. And I know I'm not alone, and I know what it is to be human. I've grown keenly aware of how mistaken I was to think that those men on the street could not be loved. So I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit to the end of the chapter. Although it may not seem very romantic, it turns out that many of your early relationships mirror aspects of your dreams and early memories, or aspects of your family of origin. Unconsciously, you select a partner who fits with your themes and is interestingly situated somewhere within the arc of your storyline. You repeat familiar patterns, Freud called it repetition compulsion. He said it was a neurotic impulse, a childish hope. You choose a partner who is something like your hurtful parent, and then you try to change them. I find that concept rather dreary, a bit like the movie Groundhog Day. I prefer to frame it like this. We have experiences. We get hurt and develop wounds. We carry the scar tissue into adulthood, where the course of our lives is defined in part by how we handle and heal what we've been through. What is a scar if not the memory of a once open wound? All of us possess a deep intuitive intelligence that moves us to repeat our experiences so we can learn from them, so we can get to know our story and its purpose for our lives, so we can use our greatest challenges to activate our development and then drop the parts that no longer serve, so we can participate in making our lives meaningful and whole, so we can love and give back to the world. It's how we frame our stories is the difference that counts.